I didn't expect that night to be the moment everything cracked. Honestly, I thought it would be like every other forced gathering at Jenna's mother's ranch. Polite small talk, a couple of awkward family stories, maybe a passive-aggressive comment or two from her mom about my quiet nature. I'd show up, nod, smile, sip whiskey in the corner, and survive. That was always my role, the calm one, the background guy, the stability. The ranch was about 40 minutes outside Austin, and Jenna loved it out there. She said the open space helped her recharge, which was ironic, considering she was the most high-energy person in any room. It was her parents' anniversary, 42 years, and of course, they wanted the whole family present. I drove us out there after work, Sky sitting in the back seat with her earbuds in, humming to something I couldn't hear. Jenna spent most of the drive texting, smiling down at her screen, barely acknowledging either of us. When we pulled up to the house, the place was already buzzing. Her brother's Jeep was parked out front, and there were at least 3 cars I didn't recognize. I parked behind her dad's truck and took a breath before getting out. Jenna was already halfway to the front porch, heels clicking across the gravel like she owned the world. Inside, it was a blur of hugs, loud voices, and too much perfume. Her family had this way of filling every inch of space, like they were performing on a stage even when no one was watching. Jenna slipped into the rhythm instantly, laughing too loud, retelling old stories, lighting up every corner of the room. I hung back like I always did, setting down the bottle of wine I brought and asking if anyone needed help with drinks. Her mother waved me off with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Dinner was set up outside under the string lights her dad had hung across the patio. There were at least 12 of us squeezed around a long wooden table. The food smelled incredible. Roast chicken, green beans, cornbread, mashed sweet potatoes. Her dad said grace, and everyone dug in. And for a while, it was fine. Until it wasn't. Her brother was telling some ridiculous story about blowing a tire on I-10 and getting picked up by a farmer with a goat in the passenger seat. Everyone was laughing, passing around the wine, enjoying the moment. Then Jenna jumped in. "Oh my God, speaking of freakouts," she said, half laughing, waving her fork like she was on stage. "You all have to hear about Evan and the email." My stomach sank. I already knew what was coming. Mr. Cybersecurity over here gets one sketchy phishing email and loses his mind, she continued. Unplugs everything, Wi-Fi, TV, even the baby monitor. Said the house was compromised. We had to use Ethernet cables for like a week. It was like living in 2003. The table roared with laughter. Even her dad chuckled. Sky laughed too, not even looking at me, just nodding like she'd heard it all before. I stayed quiet. I smiled politely. I didn't say a word. But then she added, "No wonder I have to handle all the social stuff. Evan barely talks to people unless it's in code." And just like that, I wasn't a person anymore. I was a punchline. My daughter laughed harder this time. Her aunt added something about how the smart ones are always a little weird. Jenna leaned back, sipping her wine, completely unfazed. I just sat there, chewing slowly, pretending the food on my plate needed my full attention. My ears were burning, but I didn't let it show. I learned a long time ago that defending myself only made things worse. Jenna could spin any moment into an audience pleaser. That's what she did. That's what she loved. I looked over at Sky, hoping for a flicker of discomfort, some acknowledgement that this wasn't okay. But she was still laughing, still caught up in her mother's rhythm. That was the moment something shifted. It didn't feel like rage or betrayal. It felt like clarity. Cold, sharp, almost surgical. I realized I wasn't just sitting at table. I was sitting on the outside of a life I'd spent years building. I was the one who worked late so Jenna could cut back her hours. The one who took Sky to appointments, who fixed the broken fence, who made sure the mortgage was paid on time. But here, I was just the Wi-Fi guy with the tinfoil hat. After dinner, I helped clear plates, stacking them in the sink while Jenna lit a fire in the pit outside. She poured herself another glass of red and started telling the story again to her cousins. This time, she mimicked my voice. My voice. Sky laughed again. A big, full laugh. I didn't say anything. I just stood at the kitchen window, watching them, drying a dish with shaking hands. The ride home was silent. Jenna passed out halfway through, head slumped against the window, her phone still glowing in her lap. I glanced over once when we hit a bump, and it lit up. A text from someone named Troy Hammer and Wrench. Just a wrench emoji. That was new. I didn't touch it. I didn't have to. We got home around midnight. I carried her upstairs and laid her in bed. She mumbled something about how I was so serious all the time and laughed as she drifted off. I stood there for a long time in the dark, staring at the woman I married, trying to recognize her. But she was gone, buried under the performance, the contempt, the phone she never put down anymore. I walked out of the room, closed the door behind me, and sat in my office for almost an hour, staring at nothing. And in that silence, something in me hardened, not with anger, but with resolve. She didn't know it yet, but the game had just changed. The next morning, Jenna was still asleep when I got up. Sunlight poured through the blinds, highlighting the makeup smudged across her pillow and the half-open drawer of her nightstand where her phone charger dangled out like a careless afterthought. I stood at the door for a moment, just watching. She looked peaceful, like the night before hadn't even happened, like I didn't exist. I went downstairs, made coffee, and sat at the kitchen table in silence. Sky had already left for school, probably still giggling about her dad and his tinfoil hat. I stared into my mug for a long time. I should have been used to it. The jabs, the passive-aggressive digs, the way they both talked over me like I was just background static. But last night was different. Last night didn't just bruise my pride. It pulled the curtain back on something I couldn't ignore anymore. I opened my laptop and logged into our home surveillance system. Not out of suspicion, exactly. Just curiosity. Jenna had insisted we install it 2 years ago after a break-in down the street. And I handled all the setup. She'd lost interest after a week. Forgot the password. Forgot it was even running. She was in the shower upstairs when I found what I didn't even realize I was looking for. There was a clip from last Tuesday, around 11 a.m. I had been in Dallas for work. Sky was at school. Jenna was supposed to be working from home. The camera facing the front door caught everything. Her opening it, stepping aside, smiling wide. And him, Troy. I didn't recognize him first. Mid-20s, maybe a tight white t-shirt, grease on his jeans like he came straight from a mechanic's bay. I watched her wrap her arms around his neck like they were starring in a rom-com. Then she pulled him inside. My stomach sank. I clicked through the rest of the week, Wednesday, Thursday, even Friday, and there he was again. Never for long. Never past 3 p.m. He came in. He left. Sometimes they left together. One clip showed them in the backyard, sharing a cigarette, her leaning into his side like it was the most natural thing in the world. This wasn't a fling. It was consistent, repeated, calculated. I sat there watching the footage like it was a documentary about someone else's life. I didn't cry. I didn't get angry. That part of me felt offline. What I felt instead was this terrifying calm, like the kind of calm you get just before a controlled detonation. I didn't confront her. I didn't yell. I didn't flip the table or storm into the bathroom demanding answers. Instead, I got quiet. I opened our shared financial records. Not just our main checking account, but everything: mortgage documents, insurance, Sky's college fund, utilities, the car. Jenna had never paid much attention to any of it. "You're the numbers guy," she'd always say, laughing as she handed me paperwork unopened. That was her first mistake. Almost everything, our home, the car lease, the savings accounts, was in my name. I don't think it was even intentional on her part. She just didn't care. She wanted freedom, not responsibility. Wanted to travel light while I carried the weight of our life on my back. I scrolled through the files and realized just how much leverage I had. The house was financed solely under my credit. The utilities, the internet, the car lease, all mine. Even the joint account had been funded by my direct deposits for the past 6 months while Jenna shifted to part-time consulting. She liked the flexibility, said it gave her more space to breathe. That was fine. I could take her at her word. Space was coming. I started making quiet moves. I opened a new checking account under a different bank. I pulled our last 3 years of tax returns and forwarded them to a private folder. I took screenshots of every suspicious bank withdrawal, every late lunch charge to places she swore she hated, every boutique purchase that didn't show up in our house. She was still in the shower when I copied the camera footage to a separate drive and placed it in my work bag. By the time she came down in her robe, smiling like nothing was wrong. I was already halfway through my second cup of coffee. "Morning," she said, brushing past me to grab her smoothie mix from the fridge. "Morning," I replied without looking up. She didn't notice anything. Not the stillness in my voice. Not the way I watched her through the corner of my eye. She didn't see me at all. That night, we had dinner like normal. I asked her about her day. She said it was fine. She mentioned running errands, seeing her friend Callie for coffee. The lie slid off her tongue like she practiced it. I nodded. I smiled. And in my mind, I added another name to the timeline I was building. I was logging everything now. Every text that made her smirk at her phone. Every lie she told without blinking. I was building a map of her betrayal. And I was going to draw it with such precision that when the time came, there would be no room left for denial. I wasn't going to explode. I wasn't going to break down. No, I was going to erase myself from her world so cleanly, so completely, that she wouldn't even realize it was happening until it already had. For the next few weeks, I became the version of myself that Jenna believed I was, the boring, oblivious husband. I leaned into the mask, smiled at the right times, nodded through her stories, asked about her day like I actually believed a word of it. I brought home flowers on our anniversary. She rolled her eyes and laughed, told me I was finally learning, then posted a picture of the bouquet on Instagram with the caption, "Lucky girl, 2 hearts, #grateful," like she hadn't already given her body and heart to someone else. She thought I was asleep the night I saw her texting Troy from the bathroom. I watched her reflection in the hallway mirror as she typed something quickly, thumbs tapping with this mix of urgency and affection. She smiled to herself, like a teenager, like a stranger. She didn't know I had already cloned her phone's backups, that I had seen the thread, that I had read every message she tried to delete. "Can't stop thinking about yesterday. Miss the way you taste. He'll never know. That one stuck in my throat like a splinter. He'll never know. Except I did. I knew everything. And I didn't stop there. I installed an encrypted vault on my work laptop. I filled it with time-stamped videos from the cameras, screenshots of their texts, bank statements showing hotel stays under her name, cleverly disguised with business charges. Even images from a cloud photo album I hadn't known she'd shared with him. Pictures she never posted, ones I had never seen. Her on our bed, her in our backyard, smiling, naked, shameless. She made it too easy. Troy was younger, sure, but not clever. He used the same username across his socials, and his messages were lazy, sloppy. I wasn't even angry at him. Not really. To him, she was just another married woman looking for an escape. But to me, she was a life I had built from scratch, one I had poured into until I was dry. And now she was siphoning pieces of me to feed his ego. Still, I said nothing. Sky was still treating me like a background character, too. Little comments here and there, usually mimicking her mom. "God, Dad, do you even know what TikTok is? Or you're so weird about your phone. Are you even normal?" I laughed it off. I played the role, because I knew they were both living in a house built on a lie, and I was quietly removing each brick. At work, I took a few days off under the pretense of burnout. Nobody questioned it. I'd always been the dependable one, the guy who never missed a deadline. I used that time to visit 2 lawyers. The first one was all teeth and flash, promising to ruin her in court. I didn't need that. The second one was better, quiet, calculated. She reviewed the evidence without flinching, then looked at me like she already knew what I was going to ask. "I want to disappear," I said, cleanly. I want her to wake up one day and realize I'm gone, and everything she thought she had is mine. "You've already done most of the work," she told me, flipping through the binder I'd prepared. "This is airtight." I went home that evening and made Jenna her favorite dinner: rosemary chicken, lemon risotto, grilled asparagus. She kissed me on the cheek when she walked in and said, "Wow, you're really trying lately." Then she went upstairs and spent 45 minutes on FaceTime with Troy while I scrubbed the dishes. I was ready. By the end of that week, I had moved 70% of our liquid assets into private, traceable accounts under a trust with only my name. I told her I was updating our cybersecurity protocols due to ransomware threats and that we should temporarily disable joint access to minimize risk. She nodded like she always did when I got too techie and went back to whatever influencer was yelling on her phone. I contacted the bank to remove her from our mortgage access, citing identity theft concerns. Froze our credit. Placed a fraud alert on Sky's social security number. Locked her college fund behind a dual authentication trust that required both my biometric data and a passphrase she didn't know existed. Every move I made was quiet, deliberate. A digital knife pressed so gently against her world that she never felt the bleed. I even updated the home title, moving it into a protected trust fund I had created years ago, almost as an afterthought. Back then, it was about tax benefits. Now, it was a lifeboat, and I was the only one allowed on board. Some nights, I'd lie awake listening to her in the next room, whispering to him like she was building a new life, making plans, telling him she was almost ready, that she was so done with me. She had no idea that I'd already left her, that she was speaking to the echo of a man who was 3 steps ahead. I played my part until the final scene was set. The day she told Sky she might be getting an apartment with someone was the last little push I needed. I heard it through the wall, her voice light, almost giddy. "He gets me, babe. I know it sounds crazy, but sometimes you just know. Sometimes you do." That night, I packed a small bag. Just the essentials, my passport, laptop, backup drive, and a prepaid phone. Jenna was in the bath. Sky was in her room, probably FaceTiming some kid from her school. No one noticed when I walked out the front door. I got in my car, drove to a hotel 30 minutes outside of town, and checked in under a name no one would think to search. The next morning, before sunrise, I flipped the switch. And the silence that followed, it was the loudest thing Jenna had ever heard. I woke up to silence. Real silence. No buzzing dryer. No Sky blaring music through her phone. No Jenna humming through the house like she was starring in her own reality show. Just the soft hum of the hotel HVAC and the faint chirp of birds outside the window. I laid there for a while, fully clothed on top of the bed, watching the light slowly creep in through the slats of the blinds. And then I opened my laptop and flipped the switch. I'd scheduled the financial lockdowns the night before, one after the other, like dominoes. At 6 a.m., our joint checking account was frozen, flagged for suspicious activity. At 6:15, her credit cards, personal and authorized user, declined and blocked. At 6:30, the lease on the Lexus was canceled, effective immediately. I'd had it towed earlier that morning while she slept, sent back to the dealership. I left the key fob in the mailbox. By 7 o'clock, every utility bill in our home was either canceled, transferred to my trust, or in the case of the internet, disconnected completely. No warnings. Just gone. At 7:10, she texted me, "Babe, my card just got declined at the gas station. Did you forget to pay something?" No question mark in the world could soften the panic behind that message. I didn't respond. At 7:23, another message. "Evan, I'm trying to call the bank, but it says I'm locked out. What the hell is going on?" 8 o'clock. The house officially reverted into my trust. I'd already filed the paperwork with the county office 2 weeks earlier. It just hadn't posted until today. At 8:15, my lawyer hit send on the notice of divorce. She was served digitally first, email, and again via text. Then, just to be thorough, she'd get the formal envelope by courier before noon. There was no argument, no negotiation. The evidence was stapled to the front of the filing like a badge. Photos, screenshots, timelines. The subject line on the email was simple. Evan Carter versus Jenna Carter. Filing confirmation. I left a note in the system for the processor to be polite, but firm. At 9 a.m., I dropped the second-to-last card, the college trust for Sky, locked behind a private clause I'd added weeks ago that now require my biometric authentication for access. No withdrawals, no disbursements. Not until Sky was legally of age and could prove she wasn't being manipulated. It wasn't to punish her. It was to protect her from her mother, from herself, from the fallout I knew was coming. And then came the final act. At 10 o'clock, I mailed the envelope. Inside, a thumb drive with video footage, screenshots of texts, copies of receipts, a brief but clear note addressed to Jenna's mother, her sisters, her church group, and a few friends she'd conveniently forgotten to block when things got messy. The note wasn't dramatic. It simply read, I thought you should see the version of Jenna I've been living with. Truth is like sunlight. It hurts when you've been in the dark too long. It wasn't about revenge. It was about clarity. I included her church pastor, too. Jenna had spent years volunteering with their women's group, hosted Bible studies, gave talks about forgiveness and loyalty. I figured they deserved the courtesy of truth. I turned my phone off after that. Didn't need to see the explosion. Didn't care to. Around noon, I walked into a diner near the hotel, sat at the counter, and ordered coffee and pancakes. The waitress, a tired-looking woman in her 50s, smiled at me like I was a regular. I told her it was my first time in the area. Well, she said, pouring me a refill, you picked a peaceful morning for it. I almost laughed. Peaceful. Back home, Jenna's world was catching fire. By 1 p.m., the texts started coming in on the burner phone I'd kept on just for tracking. They weren't from Jenna. They were from her friends. Her mother. 2 of her cousins. A few weren't even signed. I'm so sorry, Evan. I had no idea. She said it was just emotional. But this? Jesus Christ. Call me if you need anything. I didn't answer a single one. By 2 p.m., she was calling from her office landline. I watched the number light up on my secondary phone screen. Ignored. By 3 o'clock, the Lexus had been confirmed returned. By 3:30, a locksmith was scheduled for the house by me. I gave him permission to change every lock by 5 o'clock. By the time Jenna made it back to the house that evening, nothing worked. The garage opener failed. The front door lock blinked red. No internet. No power. No access to money. No car. I imagined her standing there in disbelief, rage building with every button that didn't respond. And I wasn't there. That was the point. Troy didn't last long. I figured he'd bolt once she stopped being exciting and started being a liability. Probably within a week. Maybe less. Guys like that are addicted to the thrill, not the responsibility. Jenna had traded her life for adrenaline. And now, without me, without the stability she took for granted, all she had was the echo of her own choices. Sky called me the next morning. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail, voice shaking. Dad, I don't know what's happening. Mom's freaking out. She said you stole everything, but she's not making sense. Please call me. Please. I saved it. Didn't delete it. Just saved it. She would understand. Eventually, I spent the rest of the evening walking trails behind the hotel. The breeze was warm, the sky dimming with this kind of peaceful gold that you only notice when your life has gone very, very quiet. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was walking on a fault line. I wasn't running. I was gone, and she was finally alone with herself, exactly where she'd been leading us all along. It didn't take long. By the end of the week, Jenna was already unraveling. For what I gathered through quiet channels, mutual friends, a couple of Skies posts I could still see, she was crashing hard. The fallout was fast and vicious, like a storm she never thought could reach her. The money was gone. Not stolen, just reclaimed. Reassigned. Everything she'd lived on, relied on, operated through, it had always come through me. She just never noticed. Or maybe she thought it would always be there no matter what she did. Her Instagram page, which once overflowed with curated brunches, yoga poses, and motivational captions about choosing joy, turned eerily quiet. Then came a cryptic story post, just black text on a white background. People aren't always who they seem. I almost laughed at the irony. By Monday, Troy was out. Apparently, he didn't take too kindly to finding out Jenna wasn't just a married woman, but a broke one. The fantasy she sold him started to rot the second real-world consequences crept in. No house, no money, no car, no plan. From what I heard, he bailed during an argument in the parking lot of a Walgreens, threw her phone at her windshield, and left her there crying. Her cousin told me that part. Called me that night, half drunk and angry. She's a mess, Evan, she said. I don't even know who she is anymore. Neither did I. I told her. Not really. Jenna tried to spin it first. Told her family I had snapped, that I was punishing her because she wanted more. Claimed I was unstable. Controlling. She cried during a prayer circle at church. Begged people to pray for Evan's heart. But that didn't last long, because the evidence I mailed had made its rounds. Quietly. Precisely. Unedited. And once people saw it, really saw it, there was no saving her narrative. Her job? Gone. She'd been using company resources for consulting weekends that were actually hotel stays with Troy. All traceable. She never expected HR to get the documentation. She didn't think I'd send it. Her mother stopped speaking to her. Her sister blocked her. The women from church who used to worship her social energy and Instagram perfect marriage stopped answering her texts. She tried calling me twice from unknown numbers. I didn't pick up. One night, Sky left me a voicemail. Her voice didn't sound angry, just lost. I don't get it. You were always so quiet, Dad. I thought you just didn't care. But now I'm starting to wonder if you were the only one paying attention. Everything's falling apart. She's blaming you for everything, but I don't know. I think I need to see you. I didn't respond. Not right away. Jenna filed a formal complaint against me 2 weeks after the fallout began, claiming I had manipulated the finances and hijacked her life. My attorney laughed when she read it. The court didn't even blink. Every transfer, every freeze, every change was documented and legal. I hadn't stolen anything. I just stopped carrying her. The public part of her life, her friends, her community, her polished image, it disintegrated faster than I could have imagined. And watching it happen from the outside was strange. Not satisfying, not joyful, just quiet. It felt like sitting at the edge of a burning building, watching flames lick the walls you once helped paint. A home you built now turning to ash, piece by piece. And her? She kept trying to control the narrative, right up until it broke her. Eventually, she started posting those sad, indirect captions, the kind that try to sound strong but bleed desperation. Growth is painful. Losing people is painful. But nothing is as painful as staying stuck somewhere you don't belong. She wanted sympathy, attention, someone to validate the chaos she'd created. But no one came. Even Sky stopped defending her after a while. One of her old friends sent me a message, short, blunt. Whatever you did, she earned it. I didn't respond. I wasn't looking for applause. This was never about revenge. It was about ending the performance. Holding up a mirror, making her see what she'd become. Jenna didn't lose everything because I left. She lost everything because she believed she'd never have to pay the cost of her choices. Because she thought I'd never wake up. That I'd just keep orbiting around her, no matter how far she drifted. But I didn't drift. I disappeared. And now, she was left holding the weight of it all. Alone, humiliated, bitter, broke. She tried reaching out through Sky once. Left a handwritten note folded inside a return package. You may think you've won, but I still remember who we used to be. You can't erase that. She was wrong. I didn't erase anything. She did. All I did was stop pretending.